Skills or pills. We're going to talk about depression. What's the one thing you do that boosts your mood quickly?
Mm-hmm.
We'd love if
Yeah.
you post the answer to that question. And the use of antidepressants
Oh my
has
gosh.
skyrocketed since 1987. And that's the year Prozac was approved by the FDA. And is it marketing, or has the level of depression
Maybe both.
skyrocketed in the United States? Despite we have more, we feel less.
Right. So interesting question, because when people just go to their doctor and get on, we've talked about this over and over and over, and this is something I've certainly experienced firsthand. And I just talked to someone yesterday who experienced the same thing. So when I was really depressed, when I was 24 and had just gone through all the problems with thyroid cancer and then all sorts of other problems, as a result of that, I went into this deep depression, wanted to die. So went to see a psychiatrist. They put me on Prozac because that was the prominent antidepressant at the time. And it made me numb. It didn't make me feel good or bad. At least I didn't want to die. But what I found was, in that numb state, I found myself behaving in ways that were never like me before. I definitely had less empathy. I definitely was more impulsive. And so when you talk about should you go on pills, or should you do things naturally? I mean, a big part of it, right? Skills. In my mind, it really depends. Number one, you definitely can't just go get on the first antidepressant without knowing what antidepressants do and how they affect the brain and what kind of a brain you have. And I know this firsthand. So, and I know so many
Right,
people.
because you have sleepy frontal lobes.
And it made my
And the
my frontal lobe
Prozac,
sleepier.
How it works
Right.
is it calms down your emotional brain, but also the front part of your brain. And so you're happier, but also more impulsive.
And I didn't really care about much.
And as you don't care, it can negatively impact your empathy.
And your relationships.
Which can impact your relationship.
Whereas something like, Wellbutrin might have been a better option for someone like me. But if you don't know, and you don't know your brain type, so I took myself off of it. Exercise was the thing that works for me, and meditation. Those two things combined, prayer, meditation, for me, they're the same. I use them together. So prayer and meditation and exercise are my go-to, must. I must do those things. They're not even an option.
Let's talk about, when should you think about medication, and when should you think about skills? And, I've been doing this 40 years. And if I had my way, if I was a good ruler, I would start teaching the skills to counteract depression in second grade.
Absolutely.
And some of the skills, and you listed one, which is exercise, critically important. Learning how to not believe every stupid thought you have. So learning how to kill the ants, the automatic negative thoughts, absolutely essential. I think it's as important as English.
And everywhere we go.
It's just a class in logic, really, that is so important.
Because it's so insidious. Everywhere we go, people struggle with this.
Nutrition.
Yeah.
There's this great study in Australia, it just came out, where researchers went to two of the outer islands. One of the outer islands had fast food restaurants. The other outer island didn't. And they measured a random group of people on both islands. And the group that had fast food restaurants had lower levels of omega-3 fatty acids. And
Makes sense.
five times the level of depression. And so given the standard American diet that has overrun America, including the White House had one of the national champion teams, and for the fifth time, he served fast food. And I'm like, that's insane, because we know that increases depression.
And let me just really quickly, because people will say, well, I take omega-3 fatty, I take a fish oil pill, so what? I can eat fast food. It doesn't quite work like that. So if you are eating a lot of processed food and fast food, it's loaded with omega-6 fatty acids. What the problem becomes is the ratio. It will help a little bit to take your fish oil. Definitely, you definitely don't not want to not take it. But that ratio, if your omega-6s far outweigh your omega-3s, and you're overloading your system with the omega-6s, that's where inflammation happens. That's what drops that ratio, and that's why you don't want that to happen.
Okay, so simple things. Learning how to not believe every stupid thing you think. Exercise, getting your diet right. So the more colorful vegetables you can put in your diet, the better that is. And when it comes to depression, if it has come and stayed and you do the skills, then maybe, like in your case, you have a genetic history of depression.
And I also was going through a medical issue.
But so if we just look
problem.
at some of the factors that may lead to medication, is pretty intense family history of depression on your dad's side. Trauma growing up, trauma can actually reset the limbic or emotional system of the brain. And those things make it more likely if the natural things don't work. And in my mind, do the natural things first. And then based on your brain type, we talk about, do you have a brain that works too hard? So then we use our serotonin interventions, either supplements or medications. If your brain doesn't work hard enough, we use the more stimulating supplements like SAMe or medications like Wellbutrin.
But there's also, and it's part of what we teach you, like in all of our books and and even in the podcast, there's also the acute stuff. Like in my case, I just had thyroid cancer, for which I had to be off of all thyroid medication. I had no natural thyroid in my body
But they
at all.
don't do that
but
anymore.
No, they don't. But you don't know what your state is unless you get your blood tested. You might have low thyroid. So you need to know all of that stuff because biological markers can also make a difference. So you want to make sure that you're checking all of that. No one told me that, oh, by the way, you're going to get depressed because we're taking you off your thyroid.
And once they replaced it, you would have been better. So
Lazarus.
Looking back, that if they would have warned you,
Right. Prepared me.
replaced it like they're doing now, and then optimized your C-reactive protein, your vitamin D level,
None of
your
that. They did none
hormone
of
markers, that you might have been able to skip medicine, but maybe not, at which point then targeted medications to your brain then make sense, but still we're in this part of psychiatry where nobody looks at your brain, which, I continue to argue is insane. It's like, how do we know unless we actually look? And, that's been my brain war for the last 30 years.
I just remember the first time, it cracks me up thinking back to that. You looked at the first time you saw my brain scan and you're like, when did you have trauma, emotional trauma? And I'm like, never, I'm fine. When did you have a brain injury? Never, I'm fine. And you're like, I remember you looking at me going, well, I'm going to change the word, but fouled up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. And I'm like, what? I was like,
did I really say
Yes.
you were fine?
No, I said I was fine.
You're
You
fine.
said I was fouled up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. You didn't even know me that well.
That was in one of the game things where I was putting you down in order to get you to attach to me.
Oh, that would never work. I can spot that a mile away.
All right. So skills always. If you struggle with depression, your first thought, if you come at it from a place of love and experience, the first thought is, what skills do I need? And even when you feel like staying in bed, get up.
Yeah.
Because what we have discovered on our imaging work is people with depression have often really low blood flow to the front part of their brain at rest. But when they try to concentrate, it gets better. So they feel really, really bad. And if they lay in bed, they just continue to feel really bad. And even though they feel like they don't have the energy to get up and go do something, when they get up and go do something, they actually feel better. And from an exercise standpoint, which you brought up, head to head against Zoloft.
Yeah.
after 12 weeks, walking like you're late, 45 minutes, 4 times a week, was equally effective. And after 10 months, it was more effective.
Interesting. So over 400 years ago, Hippocrates said, if you feel down, get up and go for a walk. And if you still feel bad, go for another walk.
So not 400 years ago, my love.
When was it?
It was for...
Oh,
about
yeah.
2,500 years
Yeah,
ago.
2,500 years ago. Sorry. Yeah. Then what was it? Socrates? No, Socrates was...
Socrates was before.
I don't
Galen was about 170 AD.
Dear Lord.
And Galen, who was the Roman physician,
So that's what I'm thinking.
who he was 170 AD. He completely believed in what Hippocrates believed in, which was diet, exercise, laughing. Now, they also added bloodletting,
So is it
which is a bad
400
thing.
something BC? Is that what I'm thinking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but Galen was actually the first one who believed you should talk about it. So he's sort of the
interesting.
father of psychotherapy. It's really not Freud. The physician Galen thought talking about the problems in your life can actually make a big difference. And so don't suffer alone. So what's the one thing people have learned? What's the one thing you've learned on how you can make your mood better? Write that to us. Send that to us. We love
And
the
what have you
interaction.
done? Like, what do you do that if those of you who...
And what can you do differently?
Right.
And if you can just post the one thing you learned from this podcast on any of your social media channels and use the hashtag Brain Warriors Way.
If you're enjoying the Brain Warriors Way podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you'll always know when there's a new episode. And while you're at it, feel free to give us a review or 5-star rating, as that helps others find the podcast.
If you're interested in coming to Amen Clinics, use the code PODCAST10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com. For more information, give us a call at 855-978-1363.